Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 58 of the NTS Podcast. Just told myself for today, just for a little bit of a catch-up, really. Talk about what's been going on with EU Masters. Also, some pretty big news about the LEC Academy orgs, which I'm sure most people would have seen. And yeah, maybe a couple other things as we go. But before we get into it, Tom, how are you doing? You all good?
It's gonna be like a 30-minute episode, isn't it? Right, and then. Yeah, we'll add an hour on to that of just us actual chatting, and it'll all be good. No, I'm good. I was a little bit late today because I was watching TV. But like, we're all good.
Was it anything good?
It is a K-pop survival show, so it was pretty good actually.
Worth making us wait then, I suppose.
I mean, I don't know if you know anything about them, but they it's like reality. It's like survival shows, like X Factor or anything like that. Apart from the fact that they don't cut anything out, really. Mm-hmm. And so each episode is like... So there was one of them where each episode's like 3 hours long.
Oh my God.
And that's just... There is literally one which I watched called like Produce, which had a lot of controversy behind it anyway, but we'll not go into that. And they have like a whole voting section of kind of finding this like new group. And one episode is 4 hours long, and it's just them ranking who's 100th and who's first, and it's all rankings, and it's
oh my God, so that's
mind-blowing TV.
It's like our tier list taken to the next level then.
Exactly. Yeah, they just rank them, and that's all it is.
Blimey. Well, glad you enjoyed it. Let's maybe get stuck in then with the academy stuff first. Like I just mentioned there. So yeah, for anyone that somehow haven't seen the news, I think it was Bloop at .esports that reported it. Basically that. Sources are saying that the LEC org owners had a vote on whether or not they should still be obliged to have an academy team in the ERLs. So obviously right now every LEC team has to have an academy in an ERL league, and everyone does. Obviously in the NLC we've got Fnatic and Excel and kind of Astralis sort of trying to get into it, but then we'll maybe come to some stuff around that in a second. And 9 out of 10 LEC org owners voted to get rid of that rule. So basically make it so that they're not obliged to have an academy and could potentially pull their academy teams out. One thing that actually confused me a bit about it was it says that they'll still have to have an affiliate team without having an academy team, which I wasn't really too sure what the difference might be. I suppose it'd be like in partnership with somebody else rather than running it themselves.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure G2 had one. Before G2 Arctic itself, I think they were. I might be wrong, but I think it was like G2 Heretics. I think it was like Heretics and G2. It's something before G2 Arctic became like a thing. So I understand that they're still gonna have like a kind of affiliation. It's basically like sponsoring and maybe helping a little bit, but there is like no like obliged need. Well, it may be in the future for an academy team to actually be present. I mean, you could arguably say that maybe with Astralis there already isn't an academy team present, and that's no hit shame on Astralis itself, but it's just obviously with the way that they've kind of gone about it. You can imagine
that Origin had kind of left them in a bit of a tricky spot anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, and I know that they're trying to like rebrand and try and maybe go into the future, but I'm interested that only one has said no. I would have thought that there would have been a couple, and obviously this is all speculation, but surely you would have to maybe say the one would be Rogue.
Yeah, it says in the article that it was Rogue that was the one.
Oh, was it Rogue?
Yeah, okay. Which obviously makes sense. They've probably made use of it better than anyone. But then at the same time, there's not been... I would have kind of thought that pretty much any team that's promoted players would have probably voted yes. And I think the only teams that really haven't is there's only a couple that haven't really. Yeah,
I think the thing is the fact that it's obliged to. Yeah. So this isn't saying that we're going to have no academy, actual academy teams in ERLs in the near future. Like you can imagine Rogue, whether this goes through or not, will probably stay one. I can imagine personally that BT would be another one of those because they still like to have that kind of ethos around it. But then you probably maybe look at the likes of Fnatic, who have rumored to be, looking at other options anyway. And then maybe you look at like Mad Lions or kind of even other rosters. And it's like the main one I could probably look at and again, this is all like not speculation. This is all me kind of saying stuff and trying to connect in the dots. It's not even, there's no like balance or base between it. But with Schalke's like issues financially with the football club, them probably voting against kind of having a academy team, and running, the expenses involved in an academy team.
Yeah.
That probably benefits them a lot as well, especially if they're trying to still keep their spot. And obviously, again, rumors have come out that then might not be having that spot, but there's still like it's less kind of revenue for certain teams who maybe are struggling as well.
Yeah, and I suppose it does make sense, especially everyone's maybe getting a bit of a panic that everyone might, like 9 of the teams might just disappear. But then if we're thinking anyway, let's imagine that 9 of them did go, I think if you're looking from like the LEC fans' point of view of like, does that affect player development or anything? I don't think there'd be really that much of an issue there. Like if we look at EU Masters, like teams that have won it before and had their players promote, obviously Mad Lions before they were in the LEC, Big have won it, LDLC have won it, and then the only 2 that were academies are Misfits and Rogue, I think. So it's not like it would be the end of the world for that. But then more in, I suppose the worry would be on the ERL side. Maybe there would be an impact on the actual ERL scene. And with the NLC in particular, I saw a few sort of back and forth on Twitter where I think people were not really too sure. I saw, for example, and this was like the most outspoken take I saw probably was Crane that said that if Fnatic and XL left, I don't remember if he even said even if just one of them left, it would be a death sentence for the region. But I wasn't too sure, to be honest. Like, I could get the argument maybe for the viewership. Like, if Fnatic dropped out, for example, which you would imagine should be probably the team pulling in the most viewership, if they dropped out, maybe that could look pretty bad. But then, I don't know, there's kind of 2 sides to it, I feel like. Because like, during the last couple of splits anyway, it's not like you really notice a huge surge in viewers when Fnatic play to think that might be what's bringing most of them in. And then the other side is if there's an EU Masters slot opened up for a non-academy team, I think that could actually maybe be better for the region, like in terms of getting decent players over here in any case, and maybe that in the long run would help. If there's stronger players coming over, that might be actually more attractive for people to come and watch. So yeah, kind of could see it going either way, really.
I think it's one of those where it's like the unfortunate situation is the only way we're going to find out is if it happens.
Yeah.
Because I look, for example, like everybody talks about the LFL, obviously the rise in viewership there, kind of how that's grown and developed as a region. That has Vitality and Misfits in that kind of system. And, some would argue, I mean, I guess it's not hard to argue that, Vitality and Misfits aren't like the 2 best sides. Misfits right now look very strong, but obviously you've got the likes of BDS, you've got K Corp, you've got loads of other kind of organizations around that as well. So it's like, would viewership have been impacted, or would that LFL have had that rise if it wasn't for Misfits and Vitality being in that kind of system and helping develop that a little bit and providing those eyes too? I would argue I think it would impact it. I don't think it would impact it as much because I feel like actually what happened with the LFL is that there was this from viewers of kind of having a product in their native language. And I think that's what drew kind of people over. And you look no further than what K-Corp have managed to do and how they've managed to garner kind of, a fan base and a viewership around them. So for me, I think that will it impact viewership? I think in some regions it definitely will. However, is it like the death sentence for the regions? No. Like talent development now has got to a point in EU Masters where it's going to continue to keep developing. It's going to get better and better each time. Well, not better and better, but there will be a consistent level. And at this point, are academy kind of rosters in some way, shape, or form, are they kind of outdated with the actual how the system is? I think that's probably the best way to say it. While you can still have an academy roster, is an academy roster now needed for nurturing these talents, developing these talents, and signing these talents? Because as we've seen now, there are loads of different rosters who have got these talents, and I can imagine there might be a few players from K-Corp who might be leaving, talent who are being developed in other kind of organizations which aren't academy. And that wasn't the case, for quite a while, and that's why I feel like academies were needed. So I can definitely see both sides, definitely.
Mm-hmm. I think on that as well, you could probably see more of them going along some sort of like affiliate route then, because yeah, like you're saying, like non-academy teams are developing players just as well, or if not better than academy teams anyway. So for your LEC sides, they may see, well, what's the point in us pumping money into it if it's going to happen anyway? And once these players get developed and we see them playing well, we can just snap them up in any case. So they might just maybe do affiliations, maybe help some teams out with sponsors and things like that, and maybe get like first dibs on the players or something like that as well.
Well, that's weird, and I do feel like as well. Overall, I think if you're an LEC side, you should have an academy, because I feel like you look at kind of the likes of Misfits Premier, and you look at the likes of Ego Rogue right now, or even not right now, but just Ego Rogue in the past. They still made it to EU Masters anyway. But like they are able to kind of gain these talents without the need of having to go and pitch them to other. They know that player inside and out, not just in the game, but around the game as well. There's a lot of invaluable kind of information you can get from a player just by having them in your academy than just kind of watching them or even like scouting them certain times in a week. So I do think that it's very beneficial to have academy rosters, but I could also see like a reason why some teams won't. For me personally, I kind of look at Fnatic and I look at G2 and I'm like, will they get a quality enough player for their rosters that it would benefit them to have an academy for 2-3 years? Because they may get like one player, two players, maybe, which will take the leap from Fnatic Academy to Fnatic or G2 Academy to G2. But is that worth it for them when they kind of have the resources themselves to kind of get essentially anyone they want already, and they don't need to kind of take that gamble? So like I said, there's two sides to it. I do think one thing it does impact, and hopefully it doesn't impact it too much, is are players going to be a little bit worse off? Because now, obviously, academies are more likely than not in every case, more likely than not to offer more like stability for some certain players, to offer maybe higher like wages for certain players, the allure of a team house. Is that going to kind of affect players in the future and kind of like, you want to strive to kind of get to those? Or are we going to see more organizations implement kind of those and kind of the wage structure remain the same? I think in some regions we will. I think in some regions we won't.
Yeah. I think I suppose another plus from keeping it as well is teams that could actually take advantage of like doing in-house scrims and things. That's like the only other side I could think of it. But we hear from like, this is kind of going back a bit, but when like Alfari was on Misfits and Shikari was on Misfits Premier, and people talk about how they would like practice matchups and things. So I suppose that's like maybe one other reason for them to stick in it, if they can actually make sure they've got someone good enough that they can do that with. But yeah, I think a lot of sides, especially those top ones like G2, Fnatic were like sort of flirted with the idea of putting up Dan and Magic Felix before, but really apart from that, neither of those two sides are going to probably use it. And I don't know, until Febiven goes up in summer, I suppose. But then it's not really the same.
I guess as well, though, there are certain things where people could say that maybe an academy doesn't always need to be talent development. Yeah. Like, for example, the Dan thing, for example, I don't know if he went on a free, or so it might have been different, but there may have been different occasions where they have paid for a player to go to an LEC roster. So, that is the argument, the counter argument for the likes of G2 and Fnatic having academies, because while they may not be at this moment in time good enough to jump straight into their roster, they could sell them off to another LEC team and then, maybe in the future get them back. So, and that's not discrediting the players on G2 Arctic and Fnatic Rising. They're like top players, clearly.
Yeah.
I just think, it's easier for a team, I think, especially when it happened, for a team like Mad Lions to trust their players and give their players kind of a shot when they were still building their organization. And same with Rogue, that it is for a G2 and it is for a Fnatic, because there's a lot of kind of expectations, I think, with those two rosters.
Yeah. I think on the whole topic, the only other kind of angle as well was the bit it said in the article. I don't remember if this was if it was saying this is a new rule or something may already exist, I'm not too sure, but about how no team could have more than, no league, no ERL could have more than 2 academies.
So this was a rule, but I think they reiterated that was still going to be a rule, right? Because I can imagine, and again, this is completely just baseless, but I can imagine there's certain organizations which will maybe look at the Prime League or look at the LFL, look at the viewership and, you know, kind of the engagement and stuff like that. And if you're an organization commercially, that's better for you. That's definitely better. So I wonder if there was also a discussion about, oh, could we have more than 2 teams in the LFL or more than 2 teams in other regions? So, but I'm glad that that's staying the same. One thing I do worry about is I kind of hope that these organizations make a decision quick. And the reason why, and I guess this is why this affiliation thing is still going to occur. So there's still kind of a link to the ERLs, is because you don't want an academy team to have an academy team for 3 years. Say BT and Fnatic both say, okay, we'll stick with it. And then suddenly in 2 years' time or in 2 splits time, they're like, I don't know if we want to do this anymore. And then they just leave. You know, I feel like that is worse than kind of them leaving straight away, because, you know, you don't want to kind of give the organization kind of too much power where they could just go up and leave a league and then maybe go back into another league. And you don't want to give them too much in terms of that, which I guess is why this affiliation thing is going to happen. Because it's like, yeah, you can leave, but you should still affiliate yourself with an organization so it doesn't cause too much issues, I guess. But...
yeah, you definitely wouldn't want them like splitting off, making their own ERL tournament with limited spots for everybody else.
The ERL Super League.
Yeah.
But I don't think, if I'm looking purely from a NLC perspective, I do think that it would cause some issues if both of them left. I think if both leave, I think there's issues. Obviously, you know, there's been rumors speculating about Fnatic possibly wanting to look elsewhere. I don't know if that's going to change now with this rule in play. But then there's also similar rumors that Astralis want to go as well, because Astralis are a Nordic organization. It's very simple as that, you know. So they want to be associated in the Nord. So I think if both leave, it's a problem. But I think if one leaves, I actually don't think it's so bad, especially with the seeding system which we have now, which may or may not change anyway. Because I think if you can kind of, for a player and for a competitive standpoint for a region, the main thing that is stopping the NLC from developing, and it's probably why a lot of people aren't really watching and building kind of relationships with a lot of teams, is because at the end of the day, they just think that Fnatic Rising and BTXL are going to get out. Or if one of those leaves, that does open up another spot. And you'd hope that, you know, the likes of, you know, other players from, you know, I look at Mkers, for example, which are essentially an NLC organization, if we're being honest, you know, you wonder if some of those players would then maybe consider going back to the NLC and, you know, kind of going back to the Nordics and building that region up, because there's now one other spot available. So there are pros and cons. But then I also look at the Italian league, and they don't have an academy team. And I know that they're not considered like the be all and end all league, but I don't think they've like particularly like mega struggled. And you look at kind of how they've performed as well. I think it's been good for them.
Yeah, because when I was thinking about that as well, like that 2-team rule, and obviously the obvious ones seem like Prime League, LFL, and the Spanish League, and then NLC is the other one. So those are the 4 that already have 2 teams. But then if you think like you say Italy for starters, where the import rules are pretty slack, so you can build, as we've seen with Makers, like EU Masters challenging teams in there. And I suppose at the moment now, like maybe Ultra League, it would be a shout if someone's looking to move as well. Like just purely based off the sort of Polish player base that seems to be around now. So even though there's no Polish teams, I think, left in the tournament, Poland is still like the most
there's a Polish team in here, Lee. There is a Polish team in here, and it is called Misfit
There
Premier.
kind of is, but sort of isn't. But yeah, there's more Polish players than anybody else.
It is. They've got 4 Polish players, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, you know.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, if there's the player base to be doing that, like if one of the ERLs is looking to move about, like let's say Fnatic do actually want to leave the NLC and maybe go to one where they can develop players better or something, then I don't know, it might even be a shout for the Ultraliga, but or the Italian league, where you could probably just do the same kind of four Polish players.
It's only Rogue, isn't it, right now, who's in the Ultraliga?
I think so, yeah, as far as I could remember. Yeah, so there's like obviously eight of the 10 teams are in those 4 leagues, and then there's the Rogue in the Ultra Liga, and then I'm blanking now. What would be the only other one?
There's Astralis. So.
Oh well, yeah, which didn't have one in like any league really, like no top league anyway, did they? Yeah. So maybe that's one for Astralis then to go for. Obviously, they've got to choose, I suppose, if they do want to stick around.
So let's ask the question. We've had the debates, they had the to and fro, and the opinions on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, if I am just going to state my statement, I actually don't think it's a bad idea. I can see the repercussions from it, but I expect certain teams to not. Like, even though it's not compulsory, I expect certain teams to still stick with it. I expect most teams to do, actually, if I'm being honest, because I do think teams kind of see benefits from it, looking at the likes of Rogue and, even with Mad Lions and, and Schalke as well as another one who have actually done quite well for talent and bringing talent through. But do you think we're going to see in summer 2021, so, that kind of season, any changes within the academy teams? Not roster changes, but like actual changes to the academies themselves.
Probably not. And if there was, I don't only imagine maybe Astralis that would try and get one. I suppose they'd have to buy a spot though, but in one of the top ERLs rather than just having them in like the Danish leagues or whatever they're in at the moment. That's the only one I can imagine. But the rest of them I wouldn't really see much change, to be honest. Not that quick anyway.
I agree. And this is why I don't think it's going to be too bad. I think if there was one, like I said, it is that kind of that fanatic rumor that has been reported prior.
Yeah.
And maybe it's the case of Fnatic just doesn't have a spot. Astralis buy the spot off them. It could be that, maybe. But I do actually think that for most of these teams, they're gonna leave it right now, and maybe in spring is when they're gonna maybe reevaluate things right now, because I think the fact that they've done it now means that for me it's kind of like we're gonna see what it is like without having this compulsion, and then maybe we'll reevaluate in spring, in next spring as well.
Actually, I think it said in the article that the rule wouldn't change, I think, till next year anyway. So it's something that I think they still have to think about. Even then, though, I don't know. It would still maybe be a bit soon. I'm not too sure. I don't think there'll be huge changes. Maybe I'll be wrong. I don't know. With that, then, let's maybe move on then to a bit of EU Masters. Probably starting with XL and their run. So obviously from last week, before the second half of the groups happened, they were 1 and 2 along with Schalke and Betis, and we'd said maybe we weren't in the worst scenario. They over the first 3 games their form had like kind of gone up, even though they only got 1 win. They were looking better towards the end, and then obviously we said, I think you said last episode that the order they had the games in this week was kind of ideal, to have Schalke first, who was basically to have the sort of on paper the weaker team first, then the second team, and then the first team, so they could try and knock out a couple of wins and then be a bit safer against K-Corp, where they didn't have to be desperate for a win. And it pretty much worked perfectly, to be fair. So that first game against Schalke, hat-tricks was like popping off obviously on Akali, and it was quite funny actually. I was watching the game and it seemed like if earlier on I don't want to say he wasn't doing too much, but it felt like he was basically getting kills for free. So I think it was a couple of times he like kind of caught up into team fights, and then they just literally left him the kill to clean it up. And I was thinking like, yeah, his score's looking pretty good, but I feel like he's not actually doing that much. And then after that, it was like 2 or 3 fights in a row. It was like hat-trick just dives on everyone and just literally just blew them up. And it was, like pretty much single-handedly was winning by the end.
I think as well, like what changed overall was what we were kind of talking about in the last game, like with Yamada, is that they changed their style, they changed their tactics, and it worked in the last game. And it very much looked like they had kind of realized this and worked on that. And I think while hat-tricks did great on the Akali as well. I thought deadly in the other game as against I keep saying BTS because that's what they kept saying. But I mean, against Betis was really, really good. Like genuinely, like there's not much more that he could have done in that game. You know, apart from maybe like a few mistakes which kind of came through. And I think that's what, like, the Schalke one gave me a lot more confidence. The Betis one was a little bit more shaky, if we're being honest. But at the end of the day, what I kind of took from these is that when BT like performed and when they trained and when they prepared correctly and kind of had the right mindset and the right game plan going in, they did just look better than those two sides. And if I'm being honest, that is quite confident in how I feel like they're going to be in the groups, in the playoffs as well, in the knockouts, because like this is, in my opinion, still the hardest group. This was the hardest group, you know, and at the end of the day, I think that BTXL just looked better than the other two teams out of that. Now, K-Corp look absolutely stupid. Like they beat Schalke in like under 17 minutes.
That was just a joke.
Like I played Wild Rift games which have gone significantly longer than that. That is ridiculous. Like I've watched. In fact, it was actually the one game because I was in and out. I watched all the BT ones, but as soon as I saw that they'd beat them in 17 minutes, I had to like go onto the YouTube, because this is why I love YouTube, and take it back to that game. And I just said, I'd just be away for 20 minutes. So, you know, my other half was like, why? I say, because there's a game which kind of ended in 20 minutes. So she kind of knows a little bit about like League of Legends. She was like, well, that's quick. And I'm like, I know. And she was like, who is it against? It's like, well, it's like one of the best German sides versus one of the best French sides. She's like, wow. I was like, even she was like shocked. You know? And she's like, yeah, no, go on, you can watch it. But yeah, I think K-Corp looked like just a different beast compared to everyone. Like even against like BT, like I mean, maybe we can go a little bit easier on BT with K-Corp because, you know, BT had secured it. Like, there was no way that BTXL would not have did not qualify. They beat Betis, and that had confirmed it for them. But even in that game, it was like there's just one great, like one A plus S. No, there's one S plus team, and then there was like a bunch of A's. And I think that just made everybody else look bad, because I actually don't think the other teams involved were that bad as well in that group.
Yeah. And there was literally a moment I was watching it and I was just looking, I think it was like 19, 20 minutes in, and I was looking at the items and I noticed literally even by like 20 minutes, Saken had 2 items and he was like onto his third, and Hatrix didn't have his mythic at that point. So it was like they literally just, I don't know, like I feel like what is the game plan against them as well? Because we've talked on the last episode about like Adam being really good, and maybe like for those of us that hadn't really seen him before, you know, pretty surprised. And in that game, they tried to like 3v1 him top as Olaf, and Olaf's not even someone that I think should be that. It's not even like a tower dive or anything. It was just like middle of the lane, and they tried to 3v1 him, and he got a kill back and like almost got another one. And it's like, what are you supposed to do? Yeah, it's just scary. I just don't know. I think it was Veteran I saw on Twitter saying about the best chance is just to try and pile on the bot lane, but then it's like the bot lane's really good. It's like, how are you going to do that?
I mean, like the bot lane's only like what, X-Batty and Targamas, you know, it's like no one's, absolutely no one's. No, like you're right. I think obviously a lot of people talk about Adam just because of how good he is. I think Saken is looking silly as well, like throughout this, which is I think even more like mind blowing for me personally, because I don't know like too much about like the French scene, if I'm being completely honest, but like I can expect Adam to be really good because I don't think like the top lane pool is like the strongest pool in EU Masters. For me, it's jungle and it's mid lane. And so I look at Saken though, and I look at how good he is compared to brilliant, absolutely brilliant mid laners. Like Hatrix is not a bad mid laner any way, it said so far. But I just thought he just looked significantly better than him, and it's crazy to think that of that gap. And obviously the jungle helps, but then I'm also like, but then you've got Macoon in as XL's jungle, and it's just I cannot believe how good this side is, and they did beat us in 22 minutes, so it was like 4 minutes later than Schalke, but I think people were saying and I haven't confirmed this, but I think people were saying on Reddit and Twitter that it got like 102,000 views on the French EU Masters stream, the BTXL K-Court one. So it's like this side is not only like great, but it's popular, and I think that's a good thing for EU Masters.
Yeah, and that was actually on that topic, a bit of a tangent, but I was surprised when I think it was LEC Wooloo's was tweeting about Schalke selling their spot, and supposedly K-Corp is out of the running for it now as well, like or had pulled out, which I'm sure Riot were like were probably pissed about, like when they knew they were interested. Obviously the fan base, but
well, I think the rumor is now, is it Team BDS? I think.
Yeah, and then it said like BDS, and then it said plus another organization that begins with H.
It's Heretics.
I guess. I think there was that and maybe one other one that people would guess.
Oh, and I think the other two, were the other ones, because I like Wooloo, because I do like the guessing game sometimes. But like he also said, I think a football club.
Yeah.
And then he said Giants. I would like Giants to be in. Obviously, it's still a big organization now. The one which surprises me is Team BDS, but I've heard that they're got significant backing and everything like that, so I can understand that. But I just don't know. The only football club I could think of, and genuinely, I know it sounds really silly, but like a team like Wolves, because Wolves have been going into like CS:GO and Dota and kind of other, and obviously Rocket League and stuff. Because a lot of people are saying like Barcelona and Real Madrid, but I know for people who don't know much about football, like Barcelona are not going through a good time financially. So I don't think going into esports right now is the greatest.
Well, they want to partner with an LPL team, don't they? Supposedly.
Yeah. I think they did actually. Yeah.
God knows where they're getting that from.
To actually have like a team in there, I think I don't know, because the spot is gonna be probably, I think the rumor is like roughly about 20 million euros. So. Yeah,
it's just surprising that any football team would be going for that, because surely pretty much every club is like making losses right now because of no fans and that.
I think there'll be a couple which won't, but let's be honest.
Maybe like a PSG or something, but yeah.
Man City is still probably making money somewhere, so.
But
it's all that European Super League money. I bet that's what it was. It was Tottenham. It was Tottenham. They got the European Super League money, and they're like, right, we'll buy an esports organization. We've got 3.5 billion to spend. They've pulled out now, and it's like, about that esports thing. I don't think we can afford it anymore.
Yeah, it depends whether or not we sell Harry Kane. God, I'd rather us not be in the LEC than that be the case, to be fair.
So with this group then, I mean, obviously, we'll talk about the other groups, but are K-Cup the favourites for this competition?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Them, yeah. Because I don't even think, like I said, it's just the popularity of them. It's the fact that, one, they went 6-0 in what I think is like the hardest group, and then two, like, they demolished sides. Like, it was, like, and again, we'll talk about, like, others in a little bit, like UCAM, for example, who also performed incredibly well, went 6-0, but, like, there was still games where I wasn't as convinced as them as when you see K-Cup like destroying.
If anyone else has gone 6-0, there's basically every other group has had a team that's underperformed. And obviously, I think Schalke, what did they go 1-5 in the end? Oh no, Betis went 1-5. But even that, they didn't look like that awful. It's a good group, and then obviously, like we're saying, K-Corp have just been ridiculous. But yeah, definitely favourites to win for me. At this point, I think I'll be really surprised if it's just anyone else, to be fair.
Well, it's the meme which I'm saying, because I obviously a bit of a spoilers of what the bracket looks like. But the meme is, it's like the two arm like the
Yeah,
arm
yeah,
wrestling one, and it's big and it's cake off because it's like that's just what people expect it to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like EU Masters, that's the two, because the way that they've done it as well is that they're right at the bottom, right at the top as well.
So yeah, to be fair, looking likely. We can maybe do a little prediction later of what we think the bracket will look like. But yeah, let's maybe talk about some of the other groups first then. So maybe may as well start off with Group A, where Big did finish top, 6-0. Kick didn't turn things around, and
it's
mad. There's no Polish side has made it into the knockouts. So
I mean, can we just
that extra seed we'll be having that? Thank you very much.
I just want to say, can we point out, and I guess this is maybe the show of like how much Kick underperformed, but Mkers went 0-2 in like their last. They lost the last 2 games and still made it in, which is quite bad, really, when you think of it. And I think though what that does say is that that's not like no slight on Mkers. I think Mkers did great in the first round to deserve kind of the spot that they got. Obviously, went 2-1 and then 1-2 in the second week. It just shows how much Kick kind of underperformed.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no flame on the Greek side, but they should not have been finishing third in this group. Like, Kick should have been, if not even like in the top 2, third at least, and the fact that they didn't is very disappointing. And the fact of the matter is, like you said, no Polish side, because there are Polish representatives, but no Polish side has made it into EU Masters knockouts. And that's quite damning, really. That's not good.
Yeah, it's mad, really. It's like, we're joking about Misfits, obviously still more or less being a Polish team, but yeah, it's pretty crazy. Obviously, I suppose with like Rogue being the one that won EU Masters last year, obviously they did basically lose every player to LEC, but still, it's a big surprise. Mkers though, doing it for the NLC sides, and again seeing a couple of ex NLC players doing well, which is pretty good. So it just goes to show as well, like especially with the NLC, literally the player base is there to have good sides from there and have NLC sides do well. It is literally. We're like beating a dead horse now, but it's literally just the bloody seeding that's stopping us actually having the good players that can play in the region.
This is the thing. This is the funny thing is that 3 of those 5 players like competed in an NLC tournament. Like, obviously we look at like Doxy and Taxa, for example, but Click also went into the NLC Fall Open as well with Dusty. So it's like these were players which have been around that scene and I hate the guy's called Click, but they clicked. These players that actually did work together really well. Obviously, you've then got Gooby, who's kind of been in the Italian scene for a little bit now. I think he was at Morning Stars, I believe, but I think also made it into EU Masters last time. So he's consistently like a good ADC who's making it in. And then you got Zvirus, who's just looked like really consistent. I really enjoyed him, and I think though, like it's nice to see Taxa. Like kind of show what he's got after being dropped. He did get dropped, unfortunately, because I think Taxa's really good. I think Taxa's great, and I think that's the thing which I want to say is that like Taxa kind of looks like so good still without having kind of the whole of XL around them as well, because like we've raved about Taxa before in the NLC, how we've considered him like one of the best junglers in the NLC. So it's good to see him outside of that academy barrier still performing very well. And same with Docs to kind of keep those performances going. Obviously had it with Riddle, now he's doing it with Mkers and has made it into the knockouts. This is an Italian side making it into the knockouts, which is something that we don't see too often. People even talk about the Italian sides like not even making it out of play-ins, for example. And then we had 2 Italian sides making it to the group stage, and one of them make it in, and then one of them really, really close to just missing out as well. So I think that the story out of this is I think everybody expected Big to be kind of the best team, especially when Kick wasn't performing as well. Big were just consistently good. There was kind of very little mistakes that Big kind of did. They didn't wow, I think, a lot of people, but I don't think they needed to. They just got the job done. But for me, like what made this group so interesting was just seeing Mkers perform and, in the end, like deserve their spot, not just because Kick played bad.
Yeah. And I think I just was trying to double check now. They were literally the only playing team to get out of their group as well, which is pretty impressive. Like there was good. Like if you look at the other playing teams, was G2 Arctic, which we'll come on to.
Yeah.
Schalke, and I think Illuminar was the one from Group C.
Yeah.
Which all are teams that seem like they would be bigger than the Makers or should be doing better than Makers, and yeah, obviously they've done really well. I think they've been I don't know. We'll see. We'll decide later on whether we see that they get through to the semis or not. But either way, getting to this far is definitely impressive. Maybe have a look at Group B then, where we've got two underperforming sides in this one. But not to take away though from SuppUp's performance. Like it's not like they were handed it or that Rogue and G2 like completely just shit the bed or anything. Like SuppUp have done really well. Again, another one where you would not have expected them to get through it. This was one that was, if anything, this was probably like the second like toughest group on paper, and that would have been not including SuppUp. Like that would have been everyone saying, okay, SuppUp would be last, Misfits Premier probably first, and then Rogue and G2 Arctic fighting for the other one. So maybe even all fighting for the first spot. But yeah, for SuppUp to make it through when I don't think anyone would have really given much of a shot before. Really impressive.
I think it's really surprising to see SuppUp in there. When you look at those organizations, like SuppUp beat two academy organizations. Like they had 3 academy organizations in their group and have managed to get out of that. So I think it's so like ridiculously good for them to have done that. And it wasn't like I would say that yes, Ego Rogue and G2 Arctic did underperform, but SuppUp still needed to get the job done, and they did get the job done. And especially in that second week, like I think a lot of people, myself included, were always thinking, okay, SuppUp did great in the first week, but surely these two teams, particularly for me, Ego Rogue are going to turn it on, and they're going to actually like proper, turn it around. They didn't win a single game in that second weekend. I guess it shows like momentum and how it went. Yeah. They won their first 2 Ego Rogue and then dropped off a cliff and then lost 4 in a row. They even beat, I believe they were the team which beat Misfits as well, like in the first week. So it might have been, I can't remember who actually, apologies.
It was SuppUp that beat Misfits.
Oh, was it SuppUp?
They went 1-1 with everyone.
They definitely deserved it. So it's like, to finish 3-3 is great in that. Like Misfits again looked really, really good, looked stronger apart from obviously the SuppUp loss. But I don't know. Maybe here's the hypothetical question, and I guess and it's no slate on Rogue and it's no slate on Arctic. But if Fnatic Rising, in your opinion, was in this group, do you think that they would have performed better?
It's tough because obviously we're saying like with Rogue, especially like momentum probably had a part in it as well, and so it's like maybe sometimes player mental kind of things like that is tough to predict. I'd probably say they wouldn't have done much better. I don't know. Who do you think they would have done better than?
No, I agree. The reason why is because I agree with you, because I think a lot of people look at kind of G2 Arctic and all the best that G2 Arctic did in this groups was stop a tiebreaker. Because in my opinion, probably if it did go for a tiebreaker between SuppUp and Rogue, which is what it could have done, it left it to the last game, I believe, wasn't it? I think that Rogue probably would have won that in a tiebreaker situation, because maybe it's the organization itself, maybe it's a little bit more used to kind of tiebreakers than SuppUp itself. And with SuppUp, it was kind of like, you kind of were second and then maybe you just kind of let it slip maybe at the end. But I do think that it's great to see like a non-top 4 region get out. It's even better to see it get out over a Polish region and a Spanish region as well. So it's like, again, I think people before this were probably looking at France and Germany as the strongest. So, but to take out what a lot of people would consider like 3 on 4 is huge.
Yeah, massive. Yeah, and then the only other group then we haven't spoken about was Group C, and this is the one where obviously UCAM finished top 6-0.
This is a crazy. This was a part of the obviously Group D because I'm biased.
Yeah.
This was the most entertaining group for me because it was like you've got UCAM, and this is me being honest. UCAM, I'm like they're winning. They're not winning like mega convincingly, but they're winning, and I love them for it, and it's great for it. They've got a 6-0, which always looks good. But then I look at Mouse, Macro, and Illuminar, and I was like, which team wants to win? Like genuinely, like you know it's bad when you're 2-4 and you have to have tiebreakers. Like the 3 teams finished 2-4, which for me kind of highlighted that UCAM were just consistently better than the other rosters. I could even argue the fact that maybe like as Yamada said, skill level, probably Mouse were the best, but there were some Mouse games where they looked great, aka the Akali game, and there were some Mouse games where they looked horrible. Like genuinely, you just didn't know what you were going to get with them, and eventually it paid off. But God, like, is this a bit of a throw from Illuminar? Because they went 0-3. They were the team to kind of beat. Obviously it looked like UCAM were getting through, but like to go 2-1 and then go 0-3 in that second week, like what happened?
I suppose it's like the argument of whether or not to do them like all in one day like that, because literally if you do have an off day, you're screwed, aren't you? Because you literally half of your groups in one day. But yeah, it's mad. Maybe because the kind of scheduling didn't help that much to have UCAM first, which was probably the harder game they were going to have. Actually, yeah, because they kind of had it what you would imagine.
Let's be honest, though. Yeah. They had UCAM first, but going into this week, they basically knew that all they really needed to do was win one game.
Yeah.
Like it was very much, a one game, and then what happens is then, there could have still been possible tiebreakers, but it depends on other results to happen. And it kind of highlighted the fact that, they went 0-3 and still got in tiebreakers for it. So for me, like, I understand like when it's so close, like it was in Group D, where I said, okay, this is where schedule is really important. When you know that, like, oh, we only need to really win one game, like surely that it doesn't matter if you're going to lose the first one against the team which is basically already qualified anyway.
True. Maybe it was like the opposite then. Maybe, I don't know, overconfident, like, oh, it's fine. First game's all right. We'll be all right. And then it's like, and then obviously they're against Illuminar and they think, okay, even if we don't win this one, we're against Magico after, and then they're against Magico and then they lose again. It's like, okay, we got the tiebreaker, but it's against Magico again and they just beat us. Shit, we got to win now.
And then also, like, as you were saying, like, it's not like it went Illuminar UCAM first. Like UCAM destroyed Mouse before that. Well, not destroyed them, but they beat them. I wouldn't say destroyed, because destroyed implies now K-Corp level, which isn't what kind of happened. But like they beat Mouse. So it's the fact that, like, you would have thought that those players would have still been like, well, even if we lose against UCAM, and then Mouse lost to Mako as well. So it's like, yeah, I don't know. I worry for any of these for Mouse. I worry for Mouse who actually got in the end, because while I feel and I'm taking my bias out of the side because I bloody love Mako. I thought it was great the fact that they managed to kind of get into like a potential playoff race and make it in, which I thought was really good of them anyway, because obviously they were the team who were 0-3 at the end of this. Like Mouse, I think, were 1-2, and then Illuminar were 2-1. So like Mako had like the biggest underdog story to make it into the tie-ins. I think is still like really impressive for them. I think out of the three, like, I think it is good that Mouse have got through because they do have like the highest ceiling out of the three. But I am like, my confidence in Mouse was like here at the beginning of EU Masters, and it's like here now. Like I'm really not convinced by this side.
Yeah, I don't know, and I think they may be a bit lucky with the knockout draw as well. So they're against Big, who obviously for the starters they all know Big.
I don't think they're unlucky.
I think they are. When I was having a look at it, they beat Big in a best of 3 in the playoffs, and then got against them again in the final and lost the next time. But like at least in the last couple of months they have beaten Big in a best of series. I'm not sure if that was when Mouse were top in the regular season in the Prime League, and not when they're on the back of almost dropping out of groups in the Masters. So maybe, I don't know, their kind of headspace might not be in the same place it was when they beat Big for the first time. But I don't know. Again, I think that's the only thing I can see, like given how they played, that could give them a bit of an edge over any of the other teams they could have played against.
Yeah, so I guess we'll talk about the knockout stage a little bit then, and like the fact that so with Big and Mouse, I do agree with you to a point where it's like at least it's a comfortable opponent for them.
Yeah.
Because at least it's someone who they kind of know inside and out. And so maybe, for a team like Mouse who can kind of then prepare a little bit more around that might be beneficial for them, as if they were facing, like a UCAM or something like that. So I do see like the point there. However, I do also say that like their other options would have been Misfits Premier, K-Corp, UCAM. It's like, I don't, apart from maybe I would say UCAM.
Yeah, I would guess they probably can't get against UCAM either from the they're in the same group anyway. So the other options, exactly. Misfits and K-Corp, it's like it's not really a nice option anyway.
Probably the best one, yeah.
So, I mean,
who do you think's coming out on top then of Big Mouse? I'll run through it quickly, the knockouts anyway.
Yeah,
so it goes UCAM Mkers, K-Corp, SuppUp, Misfits Premier, BTXL, and then Big and Mouse. So who do you think's winning the Mouse game, or the Mouse Big game?
Because I thought we could do some predictions, right? So I was writing them down, and I think I've got it's hard for me to do predictions without thinking of points involved that we usually do. So I'm trying to think of where might Tom say something else. So I was like, I don't know, I'm tempted to go for Mouse. Just I want to kind of at least predict one kind of upset, because I think a lot of them seem pretty nailed on, to be fair. And yeah, that was kind of my thinking behind it. Like this is the one that I could see where there is maybe an edge to the second place, like the second seed team in the matchup. So I don't know.
When are the actual knockouts?
I don't think it's been said yet. I can't find any sort of proper schedule. So yeah, I'm not too sure.
It's weird.
Yeah, I'll say Mouse then in that one, just so I've got one kind of spicy one.
It's big. It's a 2-0 big. I know, I understand, like you're saying, like they did take a series off them in the Prime League and everything like that, but like I don't know. Like Big looked so confident in their group, and I think a lot of people would maybe say it might have been one of the weaker groups in that, but still, like they looked confident. They looked so good, and I think it's so hard to predict Mouse to win. Because of how unpredictable Mouse can be. On the opposite side, I think that Big having Mouse, again, an opponent they know well, could also be like very detrimental to Mouse as well, because it could be they know our tricks, and from what we've seen from Mouse, like they either don't try new stuff, or when they try it, it's not as effective, and that's an unfortunate thing with them. But so I just think that Big are going to kind of gently suffocate them for 2 games, essentially.
Yeah. I wouldn't be too surprised if that's right. I feel like actually, just looking at the knockouts as well, I feel like the kind of lower half of the knockouts is probably a bit more interested in the upper one. The upper one seems like
we'll leave the BT one till the end.
All right then. All right, so we'll go to the other one, and just going from top down. So the other ones, there's UCAM against Mkers. Obviously Mkers have impressed, but I would still, I think, give it to UCAM. Maybe a 2-1.
This one is the one which I'm more torn on, I think, because I do think that if I'm Mkers, I'm happy with out of the 4. Out of the 4 sides you could have got, I think you're quite happy to be given UCAM, because I do think out of all the top teams, like UCAM have looked like the less impressive, and that's not saying that they've not been impressive. It's just less than the other ones.
I think it's actually tricky, because they're the ones that, out of any 6-0 team, they've not had to play as good as anyone else either. So it's I think it's maybe even hard to notice how good they are, because they've not really played anyone that's properly on it like we've seen in the other groups.
But then I would also say, on the other side, if you're UCAM, I think the 2 which you would want to avoid personally would have been probably BTXL and Mouse
Yeah.
were the ones you'd probably want to involve, and you probably want either a SuppUp or a Mkers. So I think they'll also be happy to have Mkers. So I think it's going to be a little bit more challenging. I could definitely see Mkers winning this though, if we kind of see teams exploit these holes of UCAM, because maybe. And this kind of isn't talked about sometimes a lot, but sometimes a team can be really good where even though they make mistakes, like teams still can't capitalize on them, and it's still difficult to capitalize. Like there's a lot of like sides just around the world in general who are like really good like one style, and even though they know how to kind of counteract that, it's hard for them still to do that because they and there's a lot of instances behind it. Like you even look at like players like Doinby, for example. He can be quite like set into one place in what he does, but that doesn't mean that you can beat that. So maybe UCAM can just keep doing what they're doing, and teams are still struggling to actually kind of break through that anyway. But I think that it's going to be 2-1 to UCAM as well. I would love it, absolutely love it if Mkers kind of went through. I mean, if we're being honest, this is whoever wins this loses to K-Corp. So because my next one for K-Corp SuppUp is SuppUp. You've had a great journey, a great run. It's a 2-0, but you're gonna I like to think so. When Blackburn won the Premier League, it was Manchester United were playing at the same time, and when Manchester United when the whistle went for Manchester United, like all the Blackburn fans who were playing Liverpool at the time, like started celebrating, and they celebrated even when Liverpool beat Blackburn because they'd won the title. They had achieved what they wanted to do, so all the fans were celebrating. This is K-Corp SuppUp, All the Balkans are just going to be like, "We're happy to be here, Let's just celebrate it. We're in the quarterfinals. We're against the best side at EU Masters. Doesn't matter, And it's going to be a 2-0 for K-Corp. It's going to get like 500,000 views on Twitch, and the world is going to rejoice."
Yeah, I'd maybe say that the better analogy would be when QPR celebrated after Man City beat them.
Yes, yeah.
not quite as impressive as winning the league from it, but they're just still happy to be there, literally happy to be there. But yeah, that's a good one. So unsurprisingly, I think K-Corp as well. I don't see anyone obviously beating K-Corp, and especially not SuppUp, to be honest. Not trying to be mean. I suppose then the last one is BTXL versus Misfits. Tom, why?
So difficult.
Tell us why BTXL are going to win.
They're not. And they may do. They may do. It's not as convincing as like. I'm glad that they've got to be glad. K-Corp are the ones I wanted to avoid.
Yeah, I was going to say they've got to be glad at least though they're not on K-Corp's side of the bracket. That's like the tiniest bit of silver lining for Excel.
I was gonna more open the question with: is a top 8 good enough for us to get an extra seed for the NLC? I don't know if it is.
I would usually say no, but it depends where that seed would come from, I guess. Like
Poland.
I was going to say, like if we're thinking of Poland, who obviously have that extra seed right now, then the fact that none of their teams got out of groups, even though they have 3 of them, is obviously good for us.
Yeah, but we also had a group which didn't make it out of play.
Forget about that.
So there is that. There is that argument.
But then, obviously, what we've spoken before is like, would it be just straight taking one of the spots from Poland, or would it maybe be taking one of maybe the Spanish play-in, or so? I don't know. It's tricky. Obviously, Spain has only had 1 team out of the groups as well, which isn't exactly ideal for them, considering they had more than us. So, but
they had a group which made it out of play-ins as well. So, like, even though they finished bottom, like G2 Arctic beat the NLC and Fnatic Rising and made it in. I as much as I would love BTXL to win this game, going off purely performances, while BT have looked so much better, I think, and developed and kind of established like a style for them. Misfits Premier just look again like Misfits Premier would be the team we would talk about if K-Corp probably wasn't here. Because I still don't think people would talk about Big, even though they're like mega underrated and could possibly win it. Because I think Misfits though are so like they're just so fun to watch as well. I love watching Misfits, similar to like me watching K-Corp. So I don't want to be mean. I think I think it's gonna be 2-0. I do. Easily. I mean, if SuppUp can beat Misfits Premier, then we can beat Misfits Premier. But I don't know if they'll be able to do it for 2 games. So I'm gonna go 2-0, but I don't think it's like I don't think this is the end of the NLC. You know, this is the worst thing that happens. You know, we've come up against a side which arguably could make it into the finals. You know, depends on kind of how big are in like, you know, more higher pressure matches. So yeah, let's do it for the viewership. Give it Misfits Premier. I'll get all the French double.
I'll go Misfits as well. It's tough. I think.
Where's the loyalty link? Come on.
I think if there's any chance, for Excel, they need literally everyone to turn up. Like, I think not trying to like single out. I don't know. For me, maybe Hat-Tricks has looked a bit shaky in the tournament. He's maybe the one player that's been a bit kind of inconsistent.
Better in the second week, though. I think in the second week, he definitely looked a lot better.
Yeah, he's one where I think he's had like the highest highs and lowest lows out of anyone on Excel in those group games. So I feel like if we get like the Akali kind of game that he had, if he can do that twice against Misfits, then they've got a chance. But
I did like him on Mauser. Like there was something just quite funny about him having a Macaulay game, and then the next game they just
literally an alt bot. Yeah,
I loved it. And the fact, like, I don't know. I wonder if just people forgot how important Malzahar and QSS is for Malzahar, but it took them a long time to get a QSS and realize, oh yeah. And the reason why is I looked at it, it's like Malzahar hadn't got a single kill since like 15 minutes in.
Blimey. All right, then what we saying for the semis then? So, I think our semi-finals both. Oh no, so a little different. So your first semi-final will be UCAM against K-Corp.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose K-Corp would win that then.
Yeah, I'm going K. Yeah, like 2-0 K-Corp.
And then the other one would be
mine would be
Misfits
Big
against Big.
Misfits. And I'm gonna go 2-1 Big on that one. So I think this is where it's interesting actually, because with yours you've gone for Mouse going through.
Yeah.
I actually think that Mouse might have a better chance against Misfits Premier than Big. No, because I've just said Big would go through. Yeah, never mind. Forget what I was going to say. Bigger, definitely.
Yeah, I've gone from a bit of an upset with Mouse the first time. I wouldn't see him beating Misfits, so I've gone for Misfits as well for the same all French final, and then I suppose both of us probably K-Corp in the final as well.
I'm going for. So my choice is either Big or K-Corp. I don't know. There's something poetic about Big, like being like just there the entire competition, being good there, but like no one talking about them as much, and then just casually 3-0 you know, like just literally have gone undefeated the entire tournament and no one's realized it until the finals. But no, I think it'll be a closer game. But so I'd want to see 5 games. 3-2 K-Corp. I think it will be a great run for this organization. Ridiculous run.
Definitely. I think actually from maybe from an LEC Wulu tweet today that it looks like there's some interest, at least from LEC teams, in Big. So there was a tweet that said, I think it was like a big player is coming to the LEC next split, which people is taken as probably a player from Big. And he's obviously like making the joke that thinking it's going to be like some mad import or something. So
well, who if we took that, who would it be? Let's have a look.
We kind of get into a bit of a rabbit hole, but he tweeted about other teams that are looking for players as well. So I think he hinted that there's like, I can't remember off the top of my head now. It was like Astralis looking for support. Excel were looking for a mid laner and a support. Fnatic were maybe looking for a second top laner. And I think there might be one more, but I can't remember the other one. So I don't know. From that, it could if that's what people are looking for, it could be more or less anyone on the whole team.
Yeah. I mean, let's just say the entirety. Right, here's a bold prediction. I think the entirety of K Corp is not going to be at K Corp by the end of it. By the end of the
Even just this split? Oh, or do you mean for next season?
Split. No,
Bloody hell.
I think they're all going. Whether that be they go to an academy team or they go straight into the LEC, I think.
I could see Astralis getting Xmati and Targamas. If you think they've the Promiscu drama, obviously going on,
this is what I look at. I look at Astralis and I think, if you want to replace a duo straight out, for me, like it's weird because like as much as I love Xmati, I think there are like better ADCs out there on their own. But in terms of like a duo, I think they are one of the strongest duos in the ERL. So if I'm looking at an organization and I'm looking I'm going to replace my bot lane, I think that's the two you go for. And if you're going to replace one, I would say that support, like I think Targamas, I would be so surprised if that guy is actually not in the LEC. I think he's looked so good and he's developed so much, even from when he was at Fnatic Rising, like that brief moment. I think he's developed so much and he's looked great.
Yeah, and obviously if they went Astralis as well with Magi Felix too, so we've got like 3/5 of old school Fnatic Rising, which is pretty mad. But yeah, I wouldn't be too surprised in that. I think from the hints that Fnatic were looking for a second top laner, all the replies was like saying Adam to go to Fnatic.
I can't imagine that. Unless they think of like potentially putting Adam in an academy and then having them rotate or something. I just can't.
It would seem harsh, but like obviously Pride didn't have the greatest EU Masters either. People still always bring him up. So I don't know, unless they maybe keep two. Well, I don't know, because this is coming off a tweet that was literally just emojis. So we're maybe digging into it a bit much.
You know what? If I'm being completely honest, I think that personally, I don't know if we're going to see like I can't imagine like genuinely what normally happens is we don't see a lot of changes in spring to summer.
Yeah.
Because normally, like, all of them are contracted for the year. So a lot of the times it's not free agency. It's, we're going to have to buy people out of their contracts. Now, the only other way that kind of bypasses that is if they are buying probably players from EU Masters, because bar probably a few of them. Well, I would say that a lot would have contracts, but maybe the buyouts aren't as lucrative and stuff. Because I do think that we're seeing more 1-year contracts, come out. Even though we still don't see it with a lot of organizations, it's still split to split. So we might see a lot of changes through, like I would say, bringing in newer players. But I can't imagine there being many changes with the regards of like swapping player to player in the LEC. Sorry, because. I don't think people want to pay out. And like you look at like Schalke, maybe they're a team which would let some of their players go. We'll see what kind of happens with them anyway. Whether the rumor is basically there that they're probably going to get sold, but we still don't know if that's going to be for this split or for the next split. Or, and obviously they've announced that Nuclear is going straight into their LEC, which we kind of guess that. We could potentially see just Schalke Revolution's roster go into the LEC and just kind of give that a go. But Misfits did it, didn't they? So, remember, then they just didn't tell anybody that they were replacing them afterwards. But, I think it's going to be very interesting, but unless it's a lot of EU Masters talent, I don't think we're going to see loads of changes.
Yeah, probably not. Like you say, from spring to summer, there's not usually an awful lot anyway. It would be weird with Schalke, though. Obviously, if it's because they've been relegated from the Bundesliga, like as we know, their football side. But then if they're trying to sell the spot to sort of get funds back and push back into Bundesliga, they'd want to do that straight away, surely, because obviously the football season will start like only more or less the same time probably as the summer split. So, or maybe a couple of months later.
We also got to mention the fact that like Schalke have they're in a lot of problems financially anyway, and so this is where like I think people don't really realize, is that like Schalke, and I love Schalke as an organization. I actually really like them as a football club, like as the club itself. But it's not the fact that they've just got relegated. It's the fact that they've also got like ongoing financial issues alongside being relegated, which was not expected with the roster, with the team which they had. It was never going to win the Bundesliga, but it was always meant to be like a stronger side.
Mm-hmm.
So I think people kind of are looking at it and thinking, oh, we're relegated. Well, what if they just hold on and go back up? There's a lot more to that, especially with potentially fans coming back next season. There's a lot of lost revenue, and especially with not having fans this season as well, that's probably lost a lot. So there's a lot of other kind of factors which have come in, which has been like the final nail in the coffin probably is the relegation, but there was always like problems there.
Yeah, definitely.
And I believe that Schalke is like so again, people don't realize, but Schalke is like, Schalke owns obviously Schalke Esports, but it's not like they're not a brand. It's not like they've not like took a team and owned it. That is like their own separate kind of like Schalke itself is their own like esports division. It's not like what we see PSG. Yeah, like PSG have PSG LGD, PSG Talent, where they kind of like have the brand associated with it and go into it. Like, no, this is like the esports organization, so it's not like they're just going to lose their name and it's the organization which has been running it. So I think people kind of get those mixed up a little bit as well. But like this is like Schalke have actually, the football club itself went in, it did split in and have its own esports division, but at the end of the day, like the football teams is the like main revenue generator, and unfortunately, despite probably esports doing very well for them and is doing very well for them, probably like if cutting costs occur, that's probably going to be one of the ones which goes as well, unfortunately.
And at the end of the day, it would be profit for them as well. Like if they bought in for it for like roughly 10 million, they're basically doubling the money.
Yeah, they're not losing money for it.
Yeah.
And you know what? And I think the way that kind of Schalke have come out, and I really respect, and this was a while ago, but when the rumor came out and Schalke did the press conference and they were very transparent that this is not what they want to do. Like they've been told that, that this is a possibility, that they are looking. They were very transparent with it. I think it was so refreshing to see an organization kind of not beat around the bus. But it's definitely something that I don't think anybody, like Schalke, the football club, don't want it to happen. Like Schalke, the esports organization, definitely don't want it to happen. But it's just one of those things which unfortunately has occurred, which isn't even really a result of esports itself.
Yeah, it's a shame. Just like at least whatever team gets into it, maybe they can pick up some of the staff or whatnot. I don't know. See what happens, I suppose.
But if I was a football club, right, and I know, obviously we're going down the rabbit hole a little bit, we could potentially get it, but
go for it.
Like maybe I don't know. It feels a bit weird if another football club comes in, given like
What if it's like Borussia Dortmund, like they're arch rivals?
Imagine no, I doubt you. I doubt it, yeah. That even under like financial issues, they will sell it to another Bundesliga club.
Well,
like,
Riot, I thought Riot might be selling it for him though. So
what did they say? An esports organization which begins with a H, it's like Hertha Berlin Esports.
Yeah, we'll see. Or Hamburg if it's from Germany. Well, plus I don't know, Borussia Dortmund, they're getting ready for the Haaland money in a couple of months, so they'll have some to spend.
It's Haaland Esports.
Yeah. God, it might be. All right, any other talking points then before we wrap up? I did actually have one. That was the news about Ender leaving the LEC broadcast, and then just thinking about maybe who could replace him. Obviously, it's the NLC is like the biggest kind of development for English speaking casters, I suppose, in Europe.
I think there's a lot of good casters. Obviously, there's a lot of great casters, and I think you look at like NLC because it's English broadcasted. I think a lot of people look towards that. I don't know if they're going to replace anyone because I do feel like my main example is that like Foxdrop probably would have played a lot more of a part, but obviously the pandemic happened essentially. So I wonder if we're going to kind of see Foxdrop maybe, hopefully, in the studio at one point. So that adds kind of another person there. You've also even though it wasn't announced, they basically dabbled with it, Scoundrel, as well, didn't they? And he did the casting as well. So there's also that. But so I'm a bit like, I don't think anybody's going to out and out like replace him. Really, they might be, but I think it's what I'm glad to hear is that Ender is not like leaving League of Legends. I would hope that the LCS seriously looks at him and takes him. I really enjoy Ender. I like Ender, just in general of like how he portrays himself, and he really like symbolizes like the LEC's kind of way of how they do kind of things, and the sense of humor which I love. I think that the LEC's like production and the staff and everything like that is one of the best, just in esports general. So it is kind of gutting to see like a big figure like that leave, but also we saw kind of big figures like that also leave prior with like Shocks, and now obviously Ender's gone this split, so there's always going to be more which comes through, but I just hope that we still get to see him in a capacity. And I think he said like Valorant as well is something else. But to wanting to go back home, like you can't blame him for wanting to go back, especially probably with the pandemic. I don't know, like maybe he could have been able to have gone back and forth if the world didn't end, essentially. But it does feel like maybe he's just been kind of like stuck in one place, and being in that one place,
And to be fair, now they've done like the remote casters a couple of times as well. Like, could always see him come back for at least some analyst desk or something like that.
Yeah, and it shows that it's not when they first announced like remote casting, and when they obviously the only thing I can remember from it, and normally because all the rest of it good, was when it was at Scoundrel and Veteran, and I think the soundboard went, didn't it? And I think that they had to like quickly, like Quickshot just suddenly appeared, like because Veteran was like, hello, is anybody here? Like, is it just me? That was funny, but like you could get little mistakes like that. But definitely like seeing him on like the analyst desk or anything to do with like content and stuff like that would always be a plus. So there's always those possibilities now, and I look forward to kind of seeing what he does, but also like it's good that what he's done for the LEC, and I look forward to kind of seeing like the direction of the production, because they always change it every split, and I always enjoy that.
Definitely. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about then? I'm pretty much out of topics.
I mean, no, it's not like we've talked for like an hour and 20 minutes. Something along those lines. We've done it. We've somehow managed to talk for another hour. See, when we have a guest on, it's so much more like, here's a topic, we'll discuss that. We'll go on to another topic, we'll discuss that. And now I feel like when you timestamp these, like I don't know how you're gonna timestamp these, because like we had like topics, and then this last half of this conversation we just talked about anything. So it's like, how are you even gonna you just put like other stuff? Like,
yeah, this and this and this and this over these 15 minutes. I'll do my best. All right, then with that, then we can more or less wrap up. One thing we can just have a quick preview of before we do finish. It's just looking ahead at some of the action coming up on the UKEL, obviously where we are kindly hosted. And coming up is the UK Proving Grounds, Scouting Grounds. So we can actually have a look at the schedule for that, which came out a couple of days ago. So it does start on next Sunday, I believe, on the 25th, starting with the group phase. So there we see there, starting with Resolve against Demise, then Barrage against London, London against Resolve, Demise against Barrage, Resolve against Barrage, and then London against Demise. So that's the group stage, all being concluded on that day. And I think the next day after that is the first semi-final. A couple of days later, you've got the second semi-final, and then on the 30th, we've got the third place match and the final, all on one day. So yeah, you've got that to look forward to as well.
It'd be really interesting to see kind of like how many of these players will kind of go into the UKEL in the future, and also into the UKLC. But either way, it's a great experience for kind of anybody who's involved with these teams, especially like I look at like the organizations involved, like Demise, like London, Resolve, Barrage. Particularly for me, like Resolve, who have looked like brilliant in terms of like how they've organized their staff. The same with Barrage as well. So it's like really interesting to see kind of players get this opportunity, which is always nice to see. Yeah,
definitely. One thing that I'd recognise as well, like Barrage top laner Jojo, I think has been like involved with there all before, but I think before he'd only been like around the UKEL, he'd been like a sub once or twice for different teams. So it's good, to see people that are actually interested as well in the actual whole sort of pyramid getting a chance to get involved where maybe they couldn't quite before. So Yeah, do check that out. Like I say, starting on Monday, starting Monday, starting on Sunday the 25th, ending on Friday the 30th. And with that then, I think we're pretty much all done. So thanks for tuning in. Anyone that is still knocking around on Twitch, of course, can follow not only to see us here, usually every Sunday, but also, like we say, the scouting grounds and the summer split when that happens as well. And if you're watching later back on YouTube or Spotify, and hopefully this one should be the first one on a few other ones as well, maybe some Apple Podcasts and whatnot. So we should be able to start distributing a little bit more. So anyway you're watching it, you can follow, and obviously you can follow our Twitters directly on the screen as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching.